So tonight I am delighted to have on board Bill Leicht, who has become a good friend over a number of years. There he is, based in the north of New York County, and here am I in Cambridge, UK. So a bit of an unlikely friendship really evolved through our work on Aiki extensions. But I genuinely mean this when I say he's one of the people I most respect in the Aikido world. And he's usually well worth listening to. So you're in for a treat, those of you who have shown up. So having sugar-coated this, Bill, would you like to
How about some chocolate?
Tell us about your family life, how you grew up, what happened there, and we'll move on to Aikido in a minute.
All right, farm boy, Minnesota, southeastern Minnesota. Spent a lot of time on the Mississippi River as a kid, as well as being on the farm. And the only problem with Minnesota is it's nice, but during the war, it was not good to have a German last name. That dogged me.
I can imagine. So were you an only child?
No, 2 brothers, 1 sister. One of my brothers died at 13 years old in a very sad accident, but he's still with me, actually.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Yeah. So that's where you spent your childhood. Did you go to college or did you go straight to work? How did that?
I gave a hint before. We kind of got run out of town, in a manner of speaking, after the war. I don't want to go into a long story, but essentially it was German last name family after the war. My father was outspoken, did not earn the love and respect of, or maybe he learned some of the respect, but not the love of the people who ran the town. And at one point, he was told, Bob Leicht, you're never going to get a job here in this town. He's a teacher. We went to Puerto Rico. My mother's Hawaiian, was Hawaiian, and that was the best they could do to get as close to the Hawaiian environment as possible. And from there, I finished high school, and the choice was go back to school in an absolutely new town in southwestern Colorado, or go to college. So I went to the University of Chicago. It's quite a change from farm to the south side of Chicago.
I can believe it.
Growing up.
What did you study?
Neurochemistry. I actually started out in a dual liberal arts and science degree, and started doing research at a very, very primitive level when I was in my junior year, and continued for many years in neurochemistry.
You're the sort of genesis of the science, I would have thought.
Oh yeah, still doing it. This is research. We're all involved in research, everybody here on the screen.
Very cool. So did that lead to a professional job, or did you do something else? Yeah,
I was at Johns Hopkins doing research as a lab assistant, but I was very much involved in the research, and my boss actually gave me a junior author in the key publication that came out of that work that we did. Right. It was very, very exciting, but I felt like I was dying on the inside of a lab. It's not like a farm in Minnesota. And I decided I would get out, and I had a sculpture career for 20 years, and then essentially started moving towards nonviolence.
Right. Okay. So when did Aikido enter the picture?
Aikido actually started when I was in the lab, and my lab mate, Yutaka Nagata, gave me a present. He said, I think you should know this. And it was a grass-bound book, clay coat paper, beautifully done, of Osensei. I never heard of Aikido prior to that. And I became very interested, but there was no Aikido in Baltimore.
Right.
So a couple of years later, I came to New York, partly because I wanted to study Aikido, but I didn't actually get started until 83.
So did you start your Aikido before you started working on the sort of non-violence projects, or the other way around?
I think I better give you some background. I don't want to talk too much about now because we're doing research, so I'd like to try something, with your permission.
Of course.
I'd like to get a sense of all of us here, because we're not simply oblongs on the screen. Each one of us has our back history and feelings. So if you could, let's just go around, and if you would, Quentin, just call people off in the order they come on your screen, either backwards or forwards, and just answer one question. A word to describe how I am right now is, and I'll start off. Ready.
Okay. Chris Campbell, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris Campbell in Boston, and a word to describe how I am right now is glad for Bill.
Excellent. Joanna, you need to unmute.
I'm a little anxious.
A little anxious, okay. Kevin.
Kevin King, Houston, Texas, anxious.
Anxious as well, okay. Jerry Hopkins.
I'm Jerry Hopkins in Iowa, and I'm feeling rather content right now.
Can you say that again? Say the word again.
Oh, I said I'm feeling content right now.
I still didn't get it. Did everybody
Content.
else?
Thank you.
Okay.
I heard
Linda.
content.
Could be my connection.
That's okay. Linda.
I missed the question. Is it how are we feeling now?
That's it.
Yeah. A word to describe. Scattered.
Scattered. Like I forgot it was Thursday. That's why I'm late.
You made it. Rob.
Content.
Content. Andres.
Curious.
Curious. Anne Wallace DeGarbo.
Grateful.
Grateful. Love it. David Kirkpatrick. Oh, no, he's.
Hi, I'm here. Yes, hi. I'm curious. Multitasking. I'm very excited for Bill.
Okay. Jerry Hopkins.
We heard from him once already.
I've
Okay,
already
sorry.
spoken.
Apologies then. Steve. Steve, you've fallen asleep in the dark there. What word would you have to describe yourself as right now?
There we are. Peaceful.
Peaceful. Marvellous. Aviv.
Intrigued.
David.
Conflicted.
Oh. Deborah.
Grateful.
Grateful. Finn.
Yeah?
Finn, what word?
Peaceful.
Settling.
Settling.
Oh.
Marvellous. Hugh.
Centered.
Judith.
Curious.
Derek. We can't hear you, Derek. You need to unmute. Try again. What was your word?
Sorry, I've been unmuted. Just a
Yes, you
minute.
have now. So you can tell us how you're feeling right now.
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Fine is good. Okay, my word is excited. So back to you, Bill.
Great, thanks. Now we can that's where we're starting from. And what I'd like to do is to move into the area that both Paul Linden and I have shared a lot, and Paul was on. There he is. He didn't say anything. Didn't give a word.
Paul, do you want to give us a word? You just need to unmute, though. Paul?
Yeah,
Good.
okay.
Done.
My medications haven't quite hit yet, so I'm feeling a little tremulous.
Okay,
Tremulous is a good word.
that's a good word. Back to you, Bill.
What we're doing, those of us who are involved in the Aiki project, is looking at the relationship between relaxation, power, and love. So we have to start from where we are, and everybody has said where you are. I invite you just to put that behind. Let's see where we go from there. I want to share an exercise that some of you may remember, maybe not, but Terry Dobson passed it on. And Terry Dobson was a rather notorious and interesting student of O Sensei, the founder of Aikido. He passed this on saying he got it from some dojo in the West Coast, but he couldn't remember where it was. And that's very much Terry. But it's called pop finger. And it does have a way of looking at relaxation. So I'm going to ask you to do a little research here with me. Pop finger starts out, let's see, can you see my finger? Am I on screen?
No, you're not on screen. For some reason, you've chosen to blank yourself out.
No, I didn't do that. There we go. Am I on yet?
No, you're not. You're still the voice.
Let's try it again.
Oh, there you are.
There you are.
Ah, yeah, my computer's been acting funny. So we start out with the finger in front. It doesn't matter which one, left, right, or whatever the third finger is. And just take the other hand and hold that finger tight. And now the finger that is being held, while it's being held tightly, just see if you can get it out easily. Just test it. If it doesn't come out easily, that's probably about normal. And what we're going to do is try a couple of things quickly to find out how to make it work. So one thing you can do, of course, is just relax the hand that's holding it. No problem. Now, at the same time, relax the hand, the finger that's being held, and push in quickly and pull out. Anybody have trouble with that?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so relaxation works both ways. Now let's try the third way. Instead of grabbing the finger really tightly, grab the finger with that holding hand, but firmly, just not tightly. Now try to pull it out. You can get it out, but it was rather more difficult. So relaxation worked in both directions. It worked on a way of getting out of a tight situation, and it also increased the power of the holding. It's well to remember that Aikido is not simply about avoiding, it's about relaxing and taking control. Both things are valid. So that's Terry Dobson's pop finger exercise. Now, if we're going to look a little further, the things that have made a big difference to me that from Aikido was, first of all, beyond relaxation, the realization that I had become a Quaker, partly as a result of working with youth gangs in the South Bronx and having a Quaker come up and say, "We like what you're doing. What do you need?" I thought he was crazy, so I said, "We need to do a video." I said, "Okay, we'll start on Monday," and he did. We completed the video on in about a week and a half with the Ghetto Brothers. It's a street gang. It was the biggest one in New York at the time. It was in the late 60s. And he said, "Now that we finished the project, I think you should know that you're really a Quaker, a Hicksite Quaker, and I invite you to find out what that is." I had no idea. So I went to the meeting and found that the Quakerism was very, very helpful to me, basically because of, again, research. It was silent research. You sit in a circle and wait for something to happen. But the relaxation wasn't so easy. And the most important thing was this, the tongue. As long as that tongue was moving, even if it was inside my mouth, I had trouble really relaxing. So I'd like you to try one more experiment. in what we're doing now. Put your tongue out a little bit and hold it gently with your teeth for about 10 seconds, like this. Or if you feel embarrassed sticking it out, keep it behind your lips, but hold it gently with your teeth. 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000, 6 1,000, 7 1,000, 8 1,000, 9 1,000, 10 1,000. Okay, let's have a couple of responses. What happened to your perception as you did that? Three people.
Personally, I didn't notice a change.
Couldn't hear you, Quentin.
I didn't really notice any change.
No change. But you had to let go of your tongue in order to answer the question.
I did have to let go of my tongue to answer the question.
I found myself having to think about whether to speak or not instead of just speaking. So it sort of enforced a step before just blurting out whatever had occurred to me, which, might have otherwise happened.
So you had to restart.
Not restart so much as I had to consciously decide to speak instead of just speaking, which, some might complain is my normal.
Okay, great. One more.
I don't know if you were counting 1 to 1,000, 2 to 1,000, but I said I'm not holding here to 1,000. I just got that. Okay,
how long did you hold the tongue?
4, maybe.
4 seconds? Okay, and how did it seem after that when you let it go?
I really relaxed and I had space. It was kind of a new place in my tongue that I couldn't felt before.
Mm-hmm. All right, your tongue found a new place, in other words.
Yeah.
The reason I did that was that I found Paul Linden's 5 embodied peacemaking exercises really a fast way of getting people to awareness and to relaxation. And the first one is to relax your tongue, but a lot of times we don't know exactly what to do when you relax your tongue. And the reason we did this experiment was after you've been holding it and let it go, your tongue is in a pretty neutral place. And it's different for everybody. For Quentin, he couldn't speak because until he had let go of the tongue. And for Joanna, she didn't want to go the full sex, but she found a place where her tongue was comfortable after that. And Viv, did you contribute to that?
No, I don't think you did.
I didn't, but I'll tell you that my tongue was tickling like crazy holding it.
Okay, there was one more person.
That's
all right. We'll just go right on ahead. Okay. There are 4 more exercises beyond the core relaxation, but the core relaxation starts with relaxing the tongue. So let's go through the rest and of the 4, not the 5, and then we'll go right ahead with the rest of it, of the presentation. You've relaxed your tongue again, please. You know where it was. Let it go back there. Now relax let your shoulders go, just let them drop. Let your belly hang out. If your belt's too tight like mine is right at the moment, just loosen it up so the belly can plop out. And just notice what that does to your state right now. You gave all of us the state you were in previously, but what is it right now that you've relaxed your belly, relax your legs a little bit? Good. Now, please think of a time when you were really happy inside. What made you smile from the inside out? Take a moment till you find it. You might notice other people's faces around the screen while as soon as you found your happy place. Something happens to all the faces. So let that feeling spread out across yourself and then out into the screen. And remember that we're here, all of us, and let it spread out from the screen in all the directions that we are, north, east, south, west, up and down. And finally, I'd like you to stand up slowly and put your, can you still see me on screen?
No, Bill, you've gone again.
All right. There we go. Now, I'd like you to find the crease between your legs and your pelvis, and just push that crease gently as you sit down, and feel the chair below you. Keep your fingers pushing back. And now relax. Let's get a report on what we see around the screen from maybe 3 people. Just, did you see any difference in the screen images?
To be honest, I was too busy focusing on what I was doing to be looking at what anybody else was doing.
Mm-hmm. Look now.
People look like they've got good posture. They look content.
There's one. Content posture. Maybe a contented posture.
Everything lowers downward.
Everything lowered downward.
Yeah.
One more.
People seem more focused, looking calmly.
Okay. So calm was common to several. All right. This was a quick one. There's much more, of course. If you've practiced aikido or done meditation or yoga or any one of the somatic practices, you realize what we're doing is just plain somatics, and it makes it a lot easier to go on. Although Paul's method was really very quick, and I think it's very useful for that reason. It's a good way to deal with not only physical crisis, if you're having to move quickly or move not at all, but it does help mentally as well. I was very impressed when he gave it to me because this is quick and you can share it with other people, and it really doesn't give away much of what you're doing. You just do it. For me, it was, I should say that Paul has collaborated with me for about the last, well, since we started Aiki Extensions. And I'd heard about his work from Don Levine, who was actually my dorm head, junior dorm head, when I was a freshman at the University of Chicago. And he'd been talking about Paul's work for about 20 years, 10 before I finally met Paul. But I found, he said, you're thinking in a very similar way. Paul's done Aikido a lot longer than I have, but both of us came to the same conclusion. This really belongs. So that when I was working with Ghetto Brothers in the Bronx, one of the things I did was share this, not Paul's exercises, because that was before I'd met Paul, but the same concepts. And over a period of 20 years working with the youth gangs, I had several really surprising outcomes. For one, the Ghetto Brothers at the very beginning had their minister of peace killed. As he came back, Black Benji came back from Vietnam, said, you know, we've got to stop this stuff. This war is crazy. And Yellow Benji told him, okay, would you like to be our minister of peace? And 3 months later, he went down a hill in the Bronx to break up a gang fight and got clubbed on the head and died. That ordinarily would be a reason to go to war. In the street, the code of the street is you don't let somebody get away with something. Yellow Benji said the brother was about peacemaking, not about war. We're not going to go to war in his memory. And he called a meeting of all the non-criminal gangs in the Bronx and elsewhere. They came together and they worked out a peace treaty. It lasted for 9 years until crack cocaine came in. But part of that was Benji was a very fine martial artist. And he knew two things. One is when you've got a problem, don't stop talking. And the other is relax. And it prevailed. I was immensely impressed that he could do that. My own experience with led to Aikido, not to Benji did Kung Fu. He was his wife was the local laundryman's daughter, and the laundryman was a Kung Fu master. So Benji studied with the local laundryman master. But after I became a Quaker, was still impressed with that. And I realized that there was much more that needed to be done, that when you're on the street, you need to be able to deal with very real physical problems as well. And I joined Aikido partly as a result of that book that Yutaka Nagata had given to me as a Christmas present. I joined the Bond Street Dojo in '83 and started learning Aikido. Of course, I was an older guy. I was 47 when I started. And went down to Washington to the first seminar with Saotomi Shihan Sensei, and had an experience that was quite amazing. It flipped a switch for me. He talked about Aikido as the art of peace, and he said, this is very real. He said a couple of other things. One is that we're all spending time in our intellects, and you cannot learn or do Aikido. You cannot be an Aikidoist as long as you're stuck in your intellect. So he went through a number of exercises, but it struck me all of a sudden that this was what Quakerism was about. It is being peaceful at the core. So if we became a little bit more peaceful and more connected as a result of these little exercises that mostly I took from Terry and Paul, there's no reason why that can't be extended. And that's what we're doing in Aiki Extensions. It's what we're trying to do in Peace Dojos International, which grew out of that. And it's part of what I'm still doing. There's one other element from it that I should share with you. When I was still in Johns Hopkins doing research in Baltimore, it was the Civil Rights Movement, '63. There were a lot of things happening, most of them were bad. King came into the church where we had gathered, gave a sermon, talked about all of the things that were wrong. And we were surrounded by, there were probably, I would guess, 5 white people and around 1,000 black folks and a few other as well in the church. So he talked about the grievances, and there was many a, yes, pastor, you're saying that's right, right on. And after 20 minutes of that, and people were pretty well worked up, he stopped dead. And for 1.5 minutes, he said absolutely nothing. And there was absolute silence in this huge Baltimore church. Then he started talking about why we were here, and that we were not here to perpetuate violence, hatred, prejudice, and making a worse world. We're trying to make a better world for us, for our children, and for everybody else. At the end of that, and he talked about Jesus and his example, that whole congregation stood up practically as a person and quietly walked out of the church and headed for Gwynn Oak Park, which was a segregated park in Baltimore. and we're joined by thousands and thousands of other people. And the whole march continued that silence from the church. It's not that people were absolutely quiet, but the feeling was just like this screen is right now. And I thought, this is something I have to learn more about.
Lost the video, Bill. Thank you.
So that and the Aikido kind of came together, and I realized that I had some more to learn, and I've been learning ever since. Peace Dojos came out of Don's work on the Aiki extensions, because I really am interested in application. How does it work in practice? I'm a farmer. You know, I want to see things grow. I want to know not only how does it work, but how can we nurture it? And that was the idea back of a Peace Dojo, which Paul and myself and Danny Hakim, who's a karateka, and David Weinstock, who's one of the people that is probably the only person in nonviolent communication who has brought the somatic element right to the focus and the fore. So the four of us have worked on that. And I've been going around. Andres knows, Andres Proaño is sensei in Quito, Ecuador. We came down there, and the Aiki Peace Week was supposed to happen. And we did have a little radio program, but my Spanish was really bad. So I forgot to mention the Peace Week, but it was interesting to see in Ecuador how people were carrying out exactly the same kind of thing as we were trying to do in New York and the US. So it has spread around the world. And not only there, but in Zipaquirá, we'd done some work before with a group of capoeiristas. So it's not a question of Aikido versus everything else. Aikido, karate, kung fu, they all at the core is the concern about how do we make peace. What I'm doing now is an extension of that. I'm working with folks in Palestine who invited me over about 4 years ago, and I went with Anne. Are you there? Oh, there you are, Anne Wallace, DeGarbo, and I went by myself. We were planning to go with Joe and Anne, who've been doing work there since 2007. But I did an Aiki workshop along with some Alternatives to Violence Project workshop, and Paul gave an online workshop. It was very well received. Perhaps the most interesting thing was that when we did an online workshop for the nonviolent activists in Alternatives to Violence Project, AVP, in the third session, we had people who, one woman was saying, Paul, this is all very nice stuff, but it doesn't apply here. It just can't. He said, we're under constant oppression here, and it doesn't end. How in the heck are these things that we're learning about how to use our bodies and how to use language and transforming power, how's that going to make any difference? And she went on for about, I'd say a good 2 minutes in that vein, describing exactly what was happening there. Then she slowed up and Paul said, what are you doing in your body right now? It was about a moment of silence, probably 20 seconds. And she said, oh, maybe Aiki does apply. So we're going on from there. Now, I could tell you a good deal more, but I think at this point I'd like to get some questions and feedback. Quentin, how does that strike you?
I'd like to quiz you a little bit about a project. You pick it. Maybe the Bronx project is a good one. So I want to know what the results of you working with them was. What were the positives that came out of that experience?
Well, It didn't change the Bronx from being a rough place to be to a nice place. But what it did do was change a lot of individual people, one of whom became became a vice president for Alternatives to Violence Project International. But before that, the group that she belonged to, which was Nieta, it doesn't mean anything, it's a cry, but it was a prison gang in Puerto Rico. She was from Guatemala. The head of it was Shadow Bobet, and they went from being a criminal gang when their leadership were locked up on RICO charges, long-term, for good reason, to being a gang that was looking for a positive community role. We had went through a crisis. I was doing Alternative Violence Project workshops, and one of the facilitators, after the first day of workshop, said, "Bill, I have to tell you something. I'm an auxiliary cop." And I said, "You're what?" He said, "I joined the auxiliary police of New York NYPD." I said, "You can't." He said, "I did." I said, "That's going to be a real problem." He said, "We'll work it out, don't worry." So the next morning he said, "I think I need to tell people that I am an auxiliary cop." There was another long silence, more than a minute, more than 2 minutes. And finally, one of the women said, "You mean to tell me you want to facilitate me in nonviolence and your people killed my father? How in the hell are you going to facilitate me?" That's where that discussion pretty much ended. He tried a couple of more times, and he's saying he was willing to do it and he thought he could do a good job. He was simply not acceptable. He left and I had to sit in. And as a result of that, I had a little negotiation, because I had to take responsibility for it, negotiation with Shadow Bobet, who said, "You know, you've betrayed us." And I said, I didn't betray you. And I told him exactly what had happened. And I said, I took responsibility for it because I brought this man in. But I still say you have to learn to deal with the cops. It was 2 more years of silence. And then he called me back and said, "Bill, I have to tell you, we've talked about it in the chapter. We now feel that we don't like the cops. We're not going to change in that. But the problem is not with the cops. The problem is with the violence in our own families and in our community. If we solve that, we're not going to have any problems with the cops."
So what did you do with them to help them, encourage them down that road? So how did you apply your influence?
Well, one was Alternatives to Violence Project. It was it's a very good experience. But I think equally important was that we had a peace dojo called the Bronx Peace Dojo. And the leadership and some of the members of the group were part of that peace dojo. And they were learning how to express power and love at the same time and feeling it, because you can't simply talk power and love. You got to be able to feel it.
So
over a period of 2 years, they were learning Aiki.
Right. So you're using Aikido very much as the tool to channel that.
Using Aiki, I did teach Aikido exercises. I taught a lot of beyond that. And I told them I was not trying to teach them Aikido. But they didn't understand that this is a way of expressing power and love at the same time.
Okay. And
that took time.
Okay. So eventually you moved on from that project. Did it carry on?
Yes, for a while. They declared themselves publicly as a nonviolent community organization. Then that group pretty much broke up, but they had no more gang fights. There had been, previous to that, and they had assassinated a member of the Latin Kings, which is probably much more familiar to you. And that problem was worked out without any more killing. So it gives you some idea of the kind of thing that is possible. And Shadow himself, actually not Shadow, yeah, Shadow and one other member of the Nieta appeared at a Universal of the Latin Kings where they installed their new Inca and spoke to the group about what was necessary if they're going to have peace in the community and be able to grow as a community. So it's spread.
Okay, so you were working for peace before you found Aikido or around the same time. How much has Aikido opened up for you as a tool to enhance the work you're already doing? Don't freeze on me now.
Are you unfrozen?
No, your video isn't, but I can hear you. So if you heard the question.
We have a freeze. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Bill. Yes, can you hear me?
I think I'm going to answer the question as best I can without it quite being.
Come on back, Bill. So while we wait for Bill to come back, which hopefully he will, anybody got any points that, Bill, are you back?
Yeah, my system froze.
I can hear you. Did you hear my question?
Hold part of it. Repeat, please.
So my question was, how much has Aikido facilitated the work that you've done? I mean, you were working in this field anyway. Was it just a hand in glove thing, so just a natural extension, or did it open ideas and ways of dealing with violence that you didn't previously have at your disposal?
Aikido is a joy for me, and has been a joy from the beginning. So that was the first change. It opened me up.
Right.
However, in the work that I've done, Aikido is a very, very small part of it.
Okay.
There are a lot of exercises that are somatic exercises that are not Aikido. And of course, there are many Aikido exercises that are not part of what I do either. So the answer is the core, the Aiki core of Aikido is the key to what I do. And I think it's the key to my relationship with other people, whether it's the Bronx gangs or kids in a school or folks in nonviolent people in Palestine. It's a way of being present powerfully and lovingly that can be helpful to other people.
Sure. Shall we open it up to other people and see what questions they've got? So folks?
Just raise a hand, or you can use the reaction thing if you want. There's a clapping thing that will do for a hand.
Hugh.
Yeah, might I just go back to, and sorry if I missed the precise explanation, go back to your story in the Bronx of this auxiliary policeman who revealed his position and then had to kind of retreat from the situation. It seems high, I don't know which year that was, but that sort of situation seems highly relevant to the modern day. And I just wonder what happened to him and what was his reaction to what happened that day. And is there a way forward today in a similar situation?
Right. I think it was a wake-up call for him that he had assumed, because he's a very charming personality, that his charm would be sufficient. But he had not reckoned with how deeply the people have been traumatized by the police.
Yeah.
This was not in his ken. He's a South American, by the way.
Right.
Argentinian. So
Which
he may
year
not
was
have had.
this?
That would have been
roughly.
That would have been roughly 90. 99, I believe, or maybe it's just after the turn of the century.
Interesting. Interesting.
So not a lot seems to have changed in 20 years in terms of the.
That's what I'm trying to ascertain.
For one thing, some of the people that were active at I mentioned Shadow Bobette. He left the gang scene because he discovered that he was a good photographer and he loved art. He'd been a rather successful drug dealer in the past, went to jail and had a transformation experience in jail where a guy took him by the lapel and said, look, you got potential. Why are you hurting your wife and your family? So his path was to go into art. Janina Calderon, who was the general secretary for the New York chapter, became the vice president of Alternatives to Violence Project International. And largely the group is no longer functioning as Nieta.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
They've taken with them their experience so that they're still active in the community. They haven't forgotten. So it's basically a good thing. People, as they get older, have less need to click with teenage age mates.
Do you think that things are people like you fighting fires that it's almost impossible to put out? And can you see the conflagration getting worse, or can you see that you're slowly making progress?
Well, I think it's we are slowly making progress because there's a lot of there are a lot of people around the world. Look at the screen. All of you are doing things. No individual is going to do it any more than Gandhi could turn India into a democratic state. But India's taken a while, and it'll take the world a while. But if we're going to have a way forward, it has to be through this kind of thing. We've had essentially 14,000 years that we've been experimenting with power without love, essentially as domination. And it isn't working. At this point, our survival as a species, and perhaps our survival as a planet, may depend upon our growing out of trying to use power for its own sake and find out how to use power lovingly.
So forgive me for always bringing it back to Aikido, but it is kind of the touchstone and the reason why you're here. So is that what you see Aikido as? Power with love?
That's I think what O-sensei saw in Aikido. On the other hand, there are countervailing forces as well. A lot of us, we've had our own traumas, and it's easy to say, you know, it can't work. This is just a vision of a crazy old man, and I've heard that people say that about O-sensei. I don't think so. I think he was crazy like a fox. What he's saying to us has to be taken seriously. Aikido has to be about love, but Aikido as a martial art can be done unlovingly as well as lovingly. And that's a constant struggle for all of us. However, I do believe that the core exercises are really a key to that, because it's really hard if you're relaxed and you're good posture to be nasty. And in fact, as soon as you're nasty, you've weakened yourself. Whether you're telling a lie or whether you're trying to hit somebody, you've weakened yourself. Anybody who's practiced any martial art knows as soon as the arm goes up, there are many, many vulnerabilities that are created.
Right. Yep.
And they aren't all physical, but the physical ones are there too.
Okay. Anybody else? I've got a question they would like to ask. What would you like to be your legacy, Bill? What would you like people to say about the work you've done?
If I were simply a person, I guess I could answer that question. But I think I'm not a he, but a we. So it's not for me to say. This is something we have to do together, and I need everybody to join in.
Right.
I want to join with all of you. There's some things that I do well and have learned. There's also everybody here has abilities, and those have to be used to change the world we're in for the better.
Okay, so you have a chance to make it, and you started to do a pitch to get the people here to not just be here tonight and then disappear and, oh, it's nice to meet Bill, but maybe to be a bit more proactive and commit to something. What would you like them to commit to?
That's a question that each person has to ask herself, not a question that I can answer. And if you just ask that question, why am I doing Aikido? I think that's a good start. Many of us joined Don Levine when he started Aiki Extensions. Not a huge number, but there were a lot of very impressive people. And I'm still in contact. Some of you are here now.
Well, I'm going to ask you to maybe talk a little bit about Bill's work. What would you like to say about Bill? I hope you're...
I would like to say he's a caring, receptive, respectful person. He draws the best out of everybody that I've seen who's in contact with him, including me.
That's not a bad thing to be said about you, Bill.
Don't tell him I said that, though.
Okay, we won't
I didn't
put
hear
that
it.
out anywhere. So what were the biggest, did you have any moments where you got into some nasty scrapes?
Yeah, everybody has. And Aikido itself was useful a couple of times. I was crossing 51st Street and a fight broke out. And the lady who was right ahead of me, black lady, went over and started trying to get the two, a bike messenger and a kid that was high on something, probably dust, but tried to break them up. I came through the crowd and joined her and was able to get the bike messenger to stop hurting the kid who he had down on the ground and was beginning to pummel, hit him in the face. And she talked to the kid and eventually we got them apart. And what I did really was just as he was hitting, I just cushioned the blow each time. And the interesting thing was he wasn't trying to hit anymore. He was just going with the flow. There are always things like that.
Very cool. Okay.
There's a whole book of them, as a matter of fact, that you know very well. 80 stories of Aikido in everyday life.
I do indeed.
Since you edited it.
Yeah, I do know a little bit about that subject.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't read it, it has the really great series of transforming power stories. They're just fantastic, including Terry Dobson's original story.
Thank you for that.
The train story.
Yep, so copies here if you want them, but also on Amazon. Okay, Bill, any final thoughts you'd like to offer us?
Quentin and Bill, am I allowed to ask a question?
You absolutely are, Deborah.
So I was wondering, Bill, about your thoughts about how to make the sort of transformation, take it from an individuals to more of a communal level, and that kind of, in a way that the difficulty of making, like you've spoken about some amazing transformational moments for individuals that changed lives, and of course those had a spillover impact on the community. But I know from speaking to you before that you were also trying to create change at the community level as well. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be really interesting.
That's a really great question and not an easy one to answer. we're talking about social transformation, which is related to but very different from individual transformation. You're working, if whatever you've been doing, you've been transforming yourself and you have control over that. When you're working with other people, it's your connection with those other people that makes that possible. That's what we call trust. And it doesn't happen easily, and it doesn't happen usually right away, although there are exceptions to that. I think you all know the book, I can't remember the name now, the book about the little boy who ends up on a planet and makes friends with a fox. Saint-Exupéry's book.
The Little Prince.
Oh, thank you. And one of the things the fox says to the boy is, if you're going to tame me, you must be here at the same time every day. And I think that reliability is very important. Of course, it's also important to pay attention to what the other person needs, not just what he wants, but what he needs or she needs. And the same thing is true of the group, because the group has needs and wants. And I think the important thing is to stick to the needs, the real needs, and question until you've gotten to the needs. That's all part of the conflict resolution process. And there are a lot of good books about that. I do also believe that Aikido dojos really have to do more. We really do. It can become very solipsistic and to just get the benefit for ourselves. So I think it really needs to be spread around. Each dojo really has to ask the question, well, why are we doing Aikido in this society with all of these difficult things that need attention, and decide what your dojo needs to do. The same thing is true of alternatives to violence, or nonviolent communication, or creative response to conflict, or resolving conflict creatively, or Aikido in the schools.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful, Bill. Yeah, very true. Very true.
Together. These are problems we cannot solve individually. So the togetherness is extremely important. And we've learned a lot from Aiki. We have to spread it.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to reach out to the people who you know who work in this field and ask for help. And I'm not saying that to you, but I'm saying it to everybody here, that it's very easy after a session like this to go back into the island again, rather than remembering that actually there are people out there who think like you do and would be willing to offer a sounding board or help or energy or whatever.
I wanted to say something about Bill and his legacy.
Please do, Jamie.
Yeah, hi Bill, and hi everybody.
Hi Jamie, let's hear.
Yeah. Sorry I couldn't get to be here for your whole talk, but I would say about Bill that Bill is just got great heart, stalwart, committed, devoted through so many years and so many personal as well as kind of social, societal issues. And I really appreciate your venturing to Gaza in recent years. That's amazing, Bill, and just your interest and care for people, and for people who are marginalized, who aren't doing so well, for bringing nonviolent principles and somatic and embodied Aikido ways to engage with nonviolence is really phenomenal. And your whole life has just been that. You're grounded and rooted, I would say grounded in your heart as well as your mind and your body. So I just really want to honor you, Bill, and all the work you do. And thank you for being such a great friend and colleague all through these years.
I feel like saying thanks, Mom, but thanks, friend. Thanks,
true.
Jamie.
I don't make shit up,
I'd like to say something, if I might.
Please do. Yes, Anne.
Okay. I must say that, Bill, you are a very strong example of what dedication looks like because when we were together at a conference, you had, first of all, collaborated to raise money for Mustafa to come from Gaza so that he could attend the Aiki AVP series at the conference. And once he got here, which was late because he had to go through Egypt and be in the desert for I don't know how many days, etc. You gave him, and Paul, you gave him what you could in the short time that he had because of his delay. And then followed it up by doing the Zoom offerings for the people in Gaza as well as in Ramallah and Hebron. And then follow that up by going in person. And just little by little, kind of like, you know, the Little Prince and the Fox. And I feel like, you know, just giving legs to that deep desire is what it's all about. The practice of your intention. And I want to thank you for that. And hopefully we can continue that work.
And we will.
What's very clear, Bill, is for those people who know you and you touch their lives and you make a difference. And that's quite a thing, quite a thing. So more power to you. And I think on that note, that's a perfect place to finish. So thank you for coming along, Bill. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being a great example of what we can be. And that's all I want to say.
Oh,
and to that too. Yeah. Okay, folks, bye. See you next few weeks. That was next week we'll be celebrating Aiki Peace Week with Aviv Goldsmith, who I think may have left the call. He might still be here, I'm not sure. And then the week after that, we'll be looking at yin and yang. We'll have a Tai Chi master and we'll be exploring yin and yang and discussing why we never talk about that in an Aikido, because we don't, yet it's very central to what we do. And then the week after that is part 2 of the Mary Heine interviews. If you were here for the first one, you'll know that was amazing, so don't miss that. But you shouldn't miss any of them, actually. They've all been amazing. Okay, so good night, everybody, and see you next week if you wish to be there. Okay.
Take care, everybody. Be well.
Yeah, take
Peace.
care, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yes.